Namaste, Yoga Revealed podcast. This is Alec Vishal Ruben coming back to you with another exciting episode. This will be sure to inspire and assist you in inquiring deep within. Just before we jump in, I have to tell you how incredibly elated I am that Andrew, myself, and my beloved partner, Annie D. Coyle, have come to you with our first ever live offering. It has been 6 years of creating these powerful interviews to assist you in your journey of yoga, and over 400,000 downloads and listeners across the globe. It is our deep honor to present to you the 7-day yoga reset. This is an opportunity to jump into a practice to reignite or maybe even establish yourself with a 7-day consistent flow, to be able to also incorporate meditations and an 8th day of a bonus sunset meditation in beautiful Costa Rica. This is a pay what you can offering starting as low as literally $1 with a suggested offering of $7. And we know that during this wild time of inflation in the world, it can be tough to invest into expensive programs. So we wanted to bring something as a gift to you, our Yoga Revealed audience, that can be what you can pay. So please do sign on in on Yoga Revealed's link in the bio, or on Yoga Revealed's Instagram or yogarevealed.com. Click the 7-day yoga reset and tag Yoga Revealed on social media, and you might be able to win some cool, amazing prizes. The 7-day yoga reset funnel, it is an opportunity also to pre-order the 100 days of yoga to truly transform your life through the lens of practice. And that will begin the end of this year or early 2023. For today's episode, I'm super excited to interview a longtime friend of mine and an amazing yoga teacher, Kali Durga. Kali has been on a unique journey, and she prides herself on having a PhD in the art of stillness. So tune in and open your heart and enjoy this episode of the Yoga Revealed podcast. Namaste, Yoga Revealed podcast family. So grateful to be here and present with you wherever you are on your journey, whether you're in the car, whether you're walking, whether you're on your mat. My name is Alec Vishal Ruben, and I'm just so grateful and honored to be bringing you another insightful episode and conversation that shares the wisdom of yoga, right? That's what we're all here for, to learn how to deepen the experience of what does it mean to be present and live life through the lens of yoga. And I'm so excited to be here with a real life friend, an incredible teacher and human being that we've known each other for almost 9-10 years now. Lifetimes. Kali, I'm so grateful that you're here with me in Colorado together in my brand new home. Thank you.
It's a blessing to be here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful to be connected. I remember seeing you when we were both beginning through just the yoga journeys. I think I really started to see who you were at Envision Music Festival, right? When you've taught there, you've been there. And so I know you've got the Pura Vida lifestyle and vibrancy that just fills up your life. Yeah,
that was definitely transitional era, I think, for both of us. And it was beautiful to see from a distance each other's evolution and be in support. I actually have a memory that just came up of being at a Rise festival, and you were supporting a class, and you came in and in the middle of a chaturanga told me to keep my shoulders in line with the elbows. That's a cue I was grateful for so early on. So to have witnessed you in your growth and then to continue re-meeting one another is a gift.
Yes, indeed. I love it. I love how the journey weaves in and out together, and here we are. So, well, one of the first questions that we always love to ask is, how did yoga first reveal itself to you in this lifetime? Take us back.
Okay. So actually, I think as it usually does, the wisdom teachings seep in through ancestral lineages. And so the inquiry for a long time, and I've been asked this question so often, and the inquiry often stopped at at me in my own path, and when I was first exposed to embodied teachings. But I've been digging a little bit and also remembering some childhood memories that have just kind of seeped through recently. And one major influence was my grandfather, who I actually never met, but it was my mother's father, and he was stationed in Cairo for 2 years during World War II. And he brought a book with him those 2 years he was gone. It was a little turquoise, tiny book, Swami Shivananda. It was entitled Sadhana. And it was a book he apparently had with him in the trenches and trained with his friends there about how to practice meditation in the midst of hypervigilance, never knowing when they were going to get attacked. And so this little bite-sized book was like some pocket wisdom for them to sustain some unimaginable fear and tension. And my mom says that when he did come back, they say the phrase at that point wasn't so trauma informed, but they were shell shocked. And so the practices that they brought back home from that time was really, really entrenched, thankfully. And so my mom says every morning, her father would sit at the foot of his bed on a towel, no yoga mats yet, but a towel. And he would do, simple stretching and 10 minutes or so of a body scan meditation. And that was something he carried with him lifelong. So I didn't have the direct transmission from him, but I did uncover that book in my basement as a little girl. And I remember pulling it out of kind of deep corner of the bookshelf. And at that age, already feeling so drawn to the types of languaging and conceptual spiritual theory that wasn't really alive or awake in me or in my direct family structure at that time. So it was years until I actually got onto a mat, but the kind of dwelling of wonder and the mystery of the words and the postures that were in that book, I did carry that, I think, and it ripened years later.
Wow. Such a visual journey. I mean, we've all seen movies of World War I, II, and being in the trenches. Most people have, at least. And like, sometimes you'd think like, well, someone has a little pocketbook. Usually at that time, it's like probably the Bible. It's like some people got the Bible, and Grandpa Kali's got the sadhana book, teaching his peers how to maintain some level of peace through absolute chaos and imminent war and quite literally shell shock occurring. And wow, what an incredible story. Do you still have the book?
And
has it been laminated? Like, oh my God.
So my sister actually moved to Jerusalem, another kind of avenue of spirit seeker she is. And she got a hold of my mom's bookcase before I did. It's in the family, though.
It's in the family.
Still there.
I would love to see some photographs of that book. Oh my goodness. I mean, seriously, I've never heard a story like that. That's so cool. That goes so back. My family is Indian, and I have lineage of that. Like, I grabbed my Nana's Light on Yoga book, and it has no plates in it. There's no photos. It's only writing. That's how old that Light on Yoga book is. Pretty cool. And that's like cool on a different level.
Yeah, it's like a war-torn. Yeah.
Wow.
Love. Deep book.
So the revealing of yoga to you was really through the ancestral embrace, through practice, through lifetimes of practice. And in this lifetime, like, how did like modern yoga? What is that approach in its revealing to you? How has that occurred for you to be able to see the modern approach and then also touch into this ancestral line and to go where you have gone to bring you to where you are present?
Love this inquiry also. Keep them coming.
They're coming.
Yes, I'm ready for them all. This particular, this is an interesting intersection, particularly for me in my practice, because I've always been very called to principles of the Buddha Dharma, and that was really the first avenue that I leaned into. So it wasn't modern yoga at first, but it was, again, and I think there's a theme for me in my practice life and in my teaching life, the language that's used. I was always so enraptured by the Buddha's prose. And just from a young age, also stealing books from bookshelves and digging in where I probably wasn't supposed to, but felt like these phrases like the Four Noble Truths and the wisdom of impermanence, and these almost just heartbreaking terms that awakened or really stirred in me a longing for a deeper way of speaking, a deeper way of moving, a deeper way of relating with others, and also with my own suffering, which I had some form of anxiety or depression or just a deeper yearning for more from a young age. And I really felt like the Buddhist language was the only format that I felt met by. So that was the first avenue that I started strolling down. And then in college, CU Boulder, was introduced to some of that kind of modern format of asana. And a lot of people talk about, that first moment of stepping into the yoga studio and the light bulb goes off and there's a complete transformation and your life is forever changed. And it was not that way for me whatsoever. And there was something in me that felt like I should be here and I'm supposed to be doing this, but I didn't enjoy it. And I was definitely dulled in the sequence and in the postures. It wasn't an enrapturement to me until I started realizing in the deeper held poses that I could start blending in some of the Buddhist psychology I had already baked into the bones. And that's when yoga came alive. But it was a lot of years of dragging myself to a mat and going through the motions, knowing at some point this skeleton will align itself in a way that some deeper potent teachings will come through. And they did, but it was more of that long-term commitment and not the enlightenment upon arrival.
I think there's something that you can speak to in that, our society is so desired upon instant gratification. I want this now. I want the handstand now. I want that much money right now. I want X, Y, and Z. You fill in the blank. I want enlightenment right now. Can you speak to a little more on the journey of, why is yoga this lifetime embrace rather than I'm going to practice for a week. I'm going to practice once a week for 10 years, or I'm just going to practice maybe a little bit every day for the rest of my life in some way, shape, or form. You know what I'm saying? There's just so much instant gratification in this world, in society. I mean, we live in one of the most fast-paced and toxic societies known to mankind. There's humor in that statement too, right? And I like how you were seeing how at first you're like, I'm going to keep showing up. Even though I think you used the word, I'm dulled, I'm bored. But I'm going to keep showing up because did you see that there was something? There was like something that was intangible that was kind of gripping you a little bit?
Yeah, I think that there was a knowing, even from a young age, that the bedrock of spiritual tradition and evolution is discipline. I think that was alive in me as an understanding from an early age. So the discipline of returning to the mat at the end of the day, you know, after school or after a long weekend or whatever it was, that the discipline of returning would definitely galvanize into some sort of result that would be beneficial. And I think also that the practice itself, I witness today, you know, we talk about modern yoga, there tends to be a emphasis on like what I like to call the bliss body and this feeling of expansion and enlightenment, or at least an enlightening away from the heavy burdens of daily life. And that becomes a really strong incentive for practitioners to come to the mat. But if that's all that we're seeking in the practice, then we won't really be cultivating the tools to deal with life when it does feel heavy, or when there is boredom in the field, or there's a source of discontent that makes sitting with this body distasteful or dissatisfactory. And that's where particularly the yin teachings, and here's my shameless plug for the slower practice, is that we stay with whatever's occurring, and there's no particular agenda to even create more spaciousness or more serenity, but just actually to wake up to an interest of what's happening right now and a willingness to host it. And I think coming back every day to the mat, irrespective of what you're bringing with you, there was something there for me that felt like a continuity in the chaos of life, and that I would know how to meet myself even when there was a lot of inner turbulence.
And even in that slowing down and coming home to self, you know, like one of my teachers, he started to say, it was the first time I ever heard it, to seek comfort in your discomfort, to become still. And in that stillness, whatever arises, you meet it. And typically in that meeting point, there might be a level of discomfort. I think no matter how experienced one is, you know, life, I definitely chew the side of the pill that says, you know, life's pretty uncomfortable. There's a lot of beauty in life. I think life is ecstatic, and life is extremely uncomfortable sometimes.
Yes.
Very much so.
Yes.
I chew on that piece personally. And to seek comfort in the discomfort amongst everything that you're saying, that's how I relate to that.
And this was really why I leaned in so heavily to the Buddhist teachings. It was the Buddha's revolutionary insight that our level of contentment or satisfaction in life is not a measure of whether or not things are going right. That
Say that again.
Our level of contentment in life is not directly informed as the most major feature of our satisfaction by whether or not conditions are going, quote unquote, right for us. And that actually our source of stability is based on how we meet what's happening and not what is actually happening. So whether it's beautiful or bitter, that there's an inner space that we can still hold a level of interest for what's occurring, and coming back to the mat every day really deepens that, because if you practice long enough, you'll feel everything.
Right.
You'll feel it all. So to have a procedure or a protocol to meet yourself with whatever's alive in you, I think that that's been the most crucial resource for me as I age and keep meeting a terrible and a beautiful world.
Wow. I love it. And so at one point did you begin to dive deeper into the realm of yoga that you're in now? Going from the modern approach, we were both at CU when,
Go
yoga,
Buffs!
yeah, go Buffs. Let's go Buffs. Let's go. When yoga revealed itself to you in this modern approach and the modern approach to asana, and then you started to touch into something where you're exploring and have been exploring now. What happened for that shift for you to begin to have a more, like, we both have very unique approaches to teaching. They're different. And I love that. And that difference began at some point for you. Who inspired that and what occurred for that? And what is that to share? Like, what's your approach? What's your methodology?
Sure.
Why do you love it so much?
So I'll share that, I'm hearing a lot these days about the concept of set and setting and how that informs experience and perspective. And so for me, the set and setting where yin yoga really rooted was in like the most yang-centric environment I've ever been in, which was living in New York City.
Super young.
Which is interesting. So coming from Boulder and really living in the Rocky Mountains and in sanctuarious settings, it didn't felt as crucial to me to have a daily meditation practice or to take retreat, because daily life rhythms felt infused with some of that slow, juicy, insightful dropping in. It's really easy to do that in Colorado. And it's one of the reasons I consider this place home. But teaching in New York City was actually when my practice became the most potent, and the dedication just strengthened so immensely, because it was a survival necessity to get home to my little corner of the city, get off the subway, get home, and take whatever form of retreat was available. Like, just to shut the city out was so crucial to my my life stream there, that I became really, really dedicated to slowing down when I could, because the world was moving so fast around me and within me while I was there. So I took some restorative yoga classes and started studying at that time with Sarah Powers, who's still my primary teacher and really a root teacher for me. And that's when I recognized the essential nature of slowing down. And it was a life raft. The pantheon of yin poses was the only way that I could settle in, because my system was so stimulated while I was there.
Can you speak to the space of slowing down when the world is moving so fast? Because I'm sure not only could I use some of that medicine, and also I'm sure some of our listeners could use some of that medicine. And can you speak to in your own life, when your life's moving fast, you have the to-do list streaming in the back of your head, and also, mind you, we don't have children, so like, I already know, like, for some of my friends who are parents who are our age, they have an infinite to-do list that I can't even begin to fathom, right? You can hear about it, but you can't really understand that journey until that's that. So it's like their world's moving, perhaps, dare I say, like twice as fast as ours. Maybe not, but we'll see. When you see all this distraction around you that wants to prohibit you to slow down, what do you do in your life, in your practice, to create the slow, to create the stilling?
I love that. Create the slow. That's gonna be a new bumper sticker or something.
I love that.
This is the vulnerability of being a facilitator, I think, and the beauty of it is that we teach best what we ourselves struggle with. So you mentioned the to-do list, and it's something, the task-oriented productivity parts of my psyche are so strong the success oriented, the movement oriented. I have quite a yang approach to the world, actually, and don't feel satisfied at the end of the day unless I've gotten my movement in, unless all my emails are checked off, unless, the flight's been booked and the plans have been made and several meetings, several practices. So I myself am the poster child for over productivity and kind of being a
go, 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 go.
Yes, and a victim of that, the culture that says the more you do, the more you are.
And the more you win.
And the more you win and the more you have, the better off you'll be. And so I understand inherently the difficulty to creating space. And the yin poses particularly because the suggestion is each posture be held for around 5 minutes, creates these little meditation containers. It's almost like an excuse to extricate from daily life and have a pause, have a sit. And so I love the really pithy, I call them glimpse practices, these moments to drop in throughout the day, 5 minutes in a Baddha Konasana, or 10 minutes in each side of a supine twist. Just these almost anatomical environments that I can check out of daily life for a while and actually check in instead. And I find those pithy, those glimpse practices, 5-10 minutes scattered throughout the day, are effective because they're more accessible. And so I'll lean into them more rather than feeling like if I don't get my hour seated meditation in the morning and then an hour and a half of asana after that, that's it for me. So
the day's shot.
The day's shot. Right. Exactly. So to have instead this convenience of pockets of the day to drop into a pose, it feels really liberating to know that even if I've started off my day on the wrong foot, or I've checked my email too early, or, life seeps in, and particularly, as you mentioned, for parents that have children or just partners or roommates that are living on other rhythms, to know that we don't have our own at all times envelope of our own practice field that's not influenced by others around us, but still to have these momentous opportunities throughout the day, even just minute amount of time to realign to the formless dimension. And so I think that's been a major keystone in the sustainability of my practice, is feeling like, those days I'm traveling or those days I'm teaching for hours on end, that I can still find 5 minutes here and there throughout the day to just recreate an inner interest.
I love it. Such a profound response. I think that's one thing I'm learning about you right now, is there's no simple answer. There's this story of an answer. There's a story of a response that takes you on a journey. And it seems like that's what you take your students on.
Thank you. Well, we are storytelling species. That's how we've passed on wisdom and information for eons. And so that's something that I've really worked towards in my teaching life, is taking these abstract concepts and these sexy buzzword principles like awakening and nirvana and opening, and what these concepts actually feel like from the lens of a vulnerable, imperfect human and the stories we experience. That's what we remember more than, the list of what the protocol of sadhana should look like. So we remember, years after our teacher training, we remember the story our teacher told us about, when yoga was first revealed to them, or their first experience crying in a pose. Like these narratives are what we carry with us. So.
I love it. Well, something that you were talking about as, the journey of COVID and the last 2-3 years, yoga has had to take a shift in its face of how to practice as well, right? For almost 2.5 years, there was no in-studio practice. And people had to create this shift and be online and practice online. Some were already used to it. Some had already been on that bandwagon. And eventually everyone had to get on that bandwagon if they wanted to practice with their community online or their teacher online, right? And I think that it creates a greater opportunity for people to be forced, should they choose to accept the challenge, to create an at-home yoga practice, right? And I wonder, what's your insight on what the difference is of an at-home yoga practice to practicing solely online to practicing in community, a mixture of all three? How do you take it?
This is a living question. And I think we're still witnessing the evolution of virtual yoga and the impact that that has on the practice field collectively and in our own individual practice. I think that one of the benefits of the online era is that it bakes in the practitioner a familiarity with going inwards, even in a mundane space, when the dishwasher's going and the mailman's coming and all of the other tasks of daily life are present, and still having the option to access inner worlds, because the ability to go to a studio and leave your cell phone in the locker room and unroll your mat and have the expectation that we'll have that space curated for us, that was an assumption that I think most of us made, that would be available to us lifelong,
right?
And this is the beauty of, for me, the Buddhist philosophy specifically, is the expectations or the assumptions we make about conditions staying as they are so that we can continue feeling the way that we prefer to feel isn't guaranteed. In fact, the opposite. There's a guarantee that those conditions won't stay the same. So none of us expected the jarring shift that occurred in such a quick
overnight
pivot. But then to meet, for many of us, what were non-favorable conditions, right? Being excluded from Sangha, not having the studio space, just a heated room with a wood floor, like deep practice space available, and to feel this inner urgency to continue. It meant for many of us that we had to continue our awakening process despite conditions being unfavorable to that. And that's where spiritual practice is the most potent. I've heard the suggestion that success on the path is a measure of how you respond when the universe does what you don't want it to do. When, not if, right? Yes. So that was an opportunity to build a home retreat space for certain, and to recommit, again and again, daily, to recommit to the practice fields when it's the opposite of an easeful decision. And I think that was a beautiful, beautiful opportunity. And I think it's also a root that will hopefully keep deepening as we rejoin, because there's just a way in which we have the opportunity to go much deeper when we know how to stay with ourselves in the midst of distractibility in home life. My practice at home is always met by, a phone ringing or someone knocking at the door, or the tasks of the minute that Shavasana is impending, the to-do list and the urgency to all of a sudden fold my laundry, right? Like all of the excuses of moving back into the world. And that's where we really deepen when we stay with.
I think everyone can also relate to, at some point in time, phone asana. God, I'm guilty of it.
And Baddha Konasana is just a perfect way to check email with the phone in between your feet.
And your legs wide open, and you're just like, oh, what is going on here?
Right. But what's so interesting about that is an experience of the anatomy of the asana, right? The skeletons engage. Like we've got the stack of the bones, we've got the external rotation going, whatever it is. And to experience the impact of that versus when mindful approach is infused, to feel the distinction between phone asana and integrated asana, even in the same pose, even if you're in the straddle forward bend for longer because you've been pulled into the Instagram ethers, that even a short amount of time in a pose without distraction is such a deeper, more meaningful impact than 30 minutes with, an audio recording going on or something else happening. And I think that's an amazing distinction between bringing your full self there and having parts disengaged.
Okay. Wow. I love that insight. How have you made your journey work for you as a yoga teacher? How has you made your journey enjoyable and, accessible to create a student base for yourself? I think that, if to an extent your yoga that you teach, practice, live, and serve is reaching others that are also creating a energetic exchange of financial compensation, and you're paying bills, you're putting light on in your house, you're putting food on your table, you're paying for a home over your head. What have you done that you've seen to be successful? And maybe in retrospect, it didn't really work. Not doing that again, but that did work, and applying that and developing that and allowing that to take its natural state of evolution, because there's a lot of people who don't want to follow, who are listening to this podcast, who don't want to follow the societal norm. And there are as well, and that's totally cool. If you love what you do, awesome, love it, totally support it. And there's a lot of people out there who are teachers who want to teach or are currently teaching and trying to figure it out, how to make this thing work. How have you made this work for yourself?
Yeah. Well, I joked at the beginning of the question around it working. And I know we've spoken about this before, that on the entrepreneurial path of yoga, there's no particular template or milestone that shows us, okay, you're here, you've made it, you're succeeding, the path is working. And there are moments of feeling, I think this is for most of us in kind of the gig industry too, if we're hosting retreats or trainings or teaching workshops, that it's not a clear linear trajectory of, selling out one retreat and then all of a sudden you've made it. So it's the question of, am I doing enough? Am I succeeding? I think that is a burning question in a lot of entrepreneurially spirited yoga teachers. And it's certainly something that I've come back to. What's the definition of success for me? And that changes constantly. I knew early on as a teacher that the studio grind was not going to fly. And I also witnessed so many friends and some of my own teachers being so depleted by that system, which really is locks you into, a really low ceiling of per class value, and then the kind of necessity to stack as many classes as you can into a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that being really problematic early on, and was also, I think, lucky to have stumbled into the yin teachings at a time when it was needed, and where the interest was just starting to awaken in the collective more. So I really started, at first just folding in secretly some yin poses here and there, because people were all coming for the power yoga practice.
And where were you teaching?
This was in Santa Monica.
Okay.
At the Bhakti Yoga Shala.
Oh, great.
And I felt like at that time, people were rushing in at 4 o'clock after a day of work, rushing in off the 405, stressed out to find a parking spot, stressed out to find a place in the little studio for their mat, elbowing in, and go, 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 the do. And it felt like I was not being of service by then asking them all to go, 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 and chaturanga push up and one movement to the next, do. So I started slowing down and folding in kind of secretly, kind of sneakily, these yin poses and the longer held floor poses through those practices, and found that was such a immediate benefit to that student body that I quickly started offering longer, more receptive spaces where we can deepen into how to hold a pose and when to know how to come out and what to do when you're intermingling a long held shape with the distractibility of the mind. So these inner methods of directing and cultivating a certain type of inquiry. And so, I'm sharing this because I started leading these workshops, and then that moved into retreat fields and teacher trainings after some years of that allowed me to get out of the studio game really with the interest of the students that I had magnetized to those teachings through the studio. So I think, you've got to put in your dues. You've got to create a student body that, or welcome in a student body that can benefit really greatly from what you're throwing down. And then from there to host, more creative rhythms of deepening into the practice life. The retreat field specifically for me felt like the greatest way to disrupt unhelpful patterns and create a new template for practice that students could then bring to either their home practice or to the studio.
I love it. Yeah, I feel that deeply. And I think that it's interesting and cool to me that early on you realized the studio hustle was not for you.
The hustle, right?
Because it took me 6 years. And maybe it took you that long or less than that. I don't know. But it took me 6 years of teaching 15 to 20 classes a week. And at that 6th year, I was like, wait, why am I doing this? I'm actually not having fun.
Right.
This kind of sucks. I'm getting paid like $35 a class.
Right.
And
Stacking
maybe
them.
if I were lucky at the very end, I got upgraded to like $60 a class. But even then, it's still not sustainable.
Right.
Wow.
And the beauty of those years is just the living wisdom and the somatic ingrainment of the practice in you to live it and to teach it with such regularity is, I think, something that a lot of students or teachers at this stage hope that they can skate over, right? The instant gratification and the handstand today, which would be really nice. But to have a level of dedication and commitment to teaching, some regularity to that, so that it's so awake in you that you can take it away from the studio and inform deeper folds of practice in a much more financially sustainable way. I think that's really juicy. And I'm just remembering now an example of that was I took a yoga journal conference, a class with Rodney Yee. And he's a teacher that has taught, similar sequencing and such ingrained principles for so many years that wherever he takes his teaching now, it's so alive and it's so potent that it's just tangible. And, he said a cue that in that class, this was years ago, but it was a cue I've probably at that point had heard thousands of times. It was something really simple. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like, and press back into downward facing dog, right? Just something we've all heard. But for whatever reason, because he had lived it and he had taught so many bodies through that, that at the moment he gave that cue and I started to press back into the pose, just this instant welling of tears, like this overcome emotion, because it was such a transmission from him. It's underneath the words. It was the decades that he had done that exact movement himself. Embodied. Right.
Totally.
And that's felt.
Yeah. And so for the person who's feeling this conversation and the flow of where we're going, and let's say that they're like, I want to be leading retreats and trainings or X, Y, and Z. They don't want to do the studio hustle. So this question is definitely focused to the teacher of the listening audience right now. What would you say is one, two, or three few steps, next best steps to help someone move in that direction? Yeah. Knowing that it doesn't happen overnight.
Yes, right.
For sure.
So I'll try to succinctly share maybe like a 2-step process.
Great.
That I find, and there's an interesting distinction between different ways of moving into your yoga. So the first step I would say is like what we call horizontal integration. When early on in the path, you are sampling the buffet of wisdom teachings and disciplines. And there's such an array now, like you can do goat yoga, right? Like that's THC yoga, there's acro yoga, there's yin yoga, all of the different disciplines that have taken root today. So that horizontal exploration early on in practice, feeling different teachers, understanding what turns you on, what turns you off, what your soul is drawn towards, what sparks you, what ignites impassioned interest. That sampling horizontally early on in the path, I think, is really essential to get as much exposure to teaching styles and different avenues of evolution that are available. But at a certain point in practice, the bedrock of deepening comes through not horizontal integration, but vertical, where you go deeper in with a similar style or process, and it becomes a living study. So the vertical integration of moving towards a particular niche or practice style or lineage that stirs you, and dedicating yourself fully for some years at least to that lineage. For me, it was yin because I found that as a necessary niche, and it also helped move me away from competing with the 200-hour vinyasa teacher trainings that were just overly plentiful.
Popping
off. And because I felt a deeper home base with yin early on, I knew that following that line of inquiry for years would give me the entrainment needed to put me on my own unique path and to commit to a teacher that awakens in you constantly a living wonder, a deeper inquiry, the curiosity, and not to bow out of that when the teachings don't feel like they're stirring you or eliciting some deep awakening, because again, it's the returning to the same wisdom discipline again and again with a sense of commitment and discipline. I think that will deepen our ability to stay with ourselves. And that's what I hope to offer any of my students, is that own inner capacity to be with. So we can't train that when we stay horizontally integrating and moving from, this lights me up today, so I'm going to do this, but it's not really feeling of interest today, so I'm going to try something else. It's training up the distractibility of the monkey mind and seeking that instant gratification. So sample it all and then lean into what feels most alive.
Yeah, I feel that. I really deeply feel that, to find a teacher, an approach, a practice, and stick with it and commit yourself to it and allow that to steep yourself into it. Yeah, I really deeply resonate with that. I think those are great key tools.
Thanks.
So what's on the next 12 months for you in your yoga and your offerings?
So this actually brings me back to a question you asked earlier about what didn't work on the path to success.
Oh, great.
Once I started leading teacher trainings and retreats with a lot of regularity, the productivity part that we spoke about earlier had a really front seat in directing my work life and my teaching life. And so for a long time, I was leading trainings once a month, something on the calendar to offer publicly at once a month, whether it was a retreat or a workshop. So just stacking like that. And of course, COVID shifted that, and realizing that rather than having a teacher training every month where, maybe I could pull in 20 students in May and, 30 in June. And rather than that I could galvanize the calendar into some really potent little portals of practice throughout the year that felt seasonally appropriate and opportunities to go in deeper with a lot of space in between. And so this next 12 months, you'll see a lot less on my calendar, which I'm so excited about, because what is there is the arsenal of the greatest tools I've cultivated so far in the attempt to live a life in awareness.
Yeah.
So there are several retreats and trainings throughout the rest of 2022 and into 2023 that I've pared back the frill and the fray and gotten to the essential teachings that I think have been the most potent in their impact on my practice. So they are a little bit more few and far between, and I'm really looking forward to that space.
I love it. Amazing. Where's home base? Like, how can people find you if they want to practice with you live or online? Are there access points there for people?
Yes. So I'm between Boulder, Colorado and Topanga, California, doing the dual citizenship of Colorado, California. So I offer a lot in both of those states and also worldwide throughout the year. What I'm really leaning into is the 20-hour deepening intensive, these long weekend retreats or trainings, typically Thursday evening through Sunday afternoon, because I think that it's a way to make accessible retreat space in a way that most of us that can't commit to, 3 months in Bali can still drink in. So you'll notice a lot of those throughout the country in 2023 on my calendar, is these 20-hour immersions. I also offer virtual, because we're in that world now. So you can find that on my website. There are practice bundles and virtual teacher trainings on kalidurgayoga.com.
Awesome. We'll definitely highlight that. I love it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Brother.
It's been so amazing. And yeah, one final question. What would be one golden nugget that you want to leave the listeners with as they move forward on their path? Whatever that nugget is. What is it?
I would love to share what's coming up right now is a poem that I recite to myself every morning. I have a little traveling altar, and the central piece to that display is a poem that, we talk about this returning to practice, and it's what I read when I don't feel motivated and when I don't want to sit and when I don't want to practice, to lean into ancient teachings that are deeper and beyond my own ability to commit, and to lean into that instead. So it's a poem that was written in the 1300s and author unknown, but the fact that it's lived this long, I feel like there must be something there. So it's called This Precious Human Life. The human body at peace with itself is more precious than the rarest gem. Cherish your body. It is yours this one time only. All worldly things are brief, like lightning in the sky. In this life, you must know as the tiny splash of a raindrop, a thing of beauty that disappears even as it comes into being. Therefore, recall your inspiration and your aspiration and resolve to make use of every day and every night to realize them.
Wow. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your heart wisdom and your life wisdom, your spirit with myself, coming here in presence and with the Yoga Revealed community. And thank you to our amazing listeners. We love you so much. By the time you have listened to this, know that the 7-Day Yoga Reset is out and the 100 Days of Yoga is also out. Please check the links below and follow Kali on Instagram. Connect with her, send her a message, let her know what you thought about this conversation. I know that it would light her world up and it lights mine up to know that you're a part of our community. From our hearts to yours, namaste. Thank you so much, Yoga Revealed Podcast, for listening, tuning in, and dropping in. This is Alec Vishal Ruben, and if you found as much value from Kali as I did, please be sure to follow her on social media, Kali_Durga, and check out her website, Kali Durga Yoga, for upcoming offerings, trainings, and retreats. And in closing, please be sure to check out Yoga Revealed's 7-Day Yoga Reset as an opportunity to reignite and establish your yoga practice with introductory classes and peaceful meditations that are perfect for the beginner and also great for the experienced yoga teacher and practitioner. Again, you can pay what you want from as low as $1, and stay tuned for incredible interviews coming soon to you and incredible offerings from the Yoga Revealed teachers and community. My friends, thank you. We will see you next time, and remember that you make a difference every single day. From my heart to yours, love life. Namaste. Peace.